Hey everyone, welcome to another video. With there being so few movie releases right now, I wanted to take the time and present a video that I have had in my mind for quite a while now, and that is to talk about one of my favorite films of 2021, and that is Leos Carax's masterpiece, Annette. One of the most refreshingly unique and original films that I have ever seen. It was very divisive, but I just think it added so much and captured something that felt really special to me. So with that said, let's dive in and analyze one of the greatest films of this decade.
First time I fell in love. It all went so fast.
Now, obviously, as a full analysis of this film, I'm going to be talking full spoilers for Annette. If you want to know my recommendation, I highly recommend you see this movie. It is very interesting, and even if you don't like it, you're going to see something very unique. So I highly recommend you check it out, and let's get into this full analysis. So if you don't know what Annette is, it is a very dark musical starring Adam Driver, Marion Cotillard, and Simon Helberg in this very French New Wave feeling film. This was written by the Sparks brothers, very well-renowned musicians who have had a very illustrious career, and this was their first foray into filmmaking and writing this screenplay. However, they really needed a director to helm this film, and they got Leos Carax involved to do his first film since Holy Motors in 2012. Now, to me, while the songs and a lot of the dialogue definitely feels like it's from Sparks, the whole tone and stylistic choices and the way that the narrative kind of progresses feels like it's all Leos Carax. And to me, it feels more like a Carax film than a Sparks film. Because this film feels like it's analyzing Carax a little bit. It feels kind of personal, this film. And the way that this starts just straight away feels like a Carax film. In Holy Motors, there's this whole sequence in the very beginning of the film that breaks the fourth wall and showcases his return to filmmaking. And this kind of has a similar kind of deal here. This released at the Cannes Film Festival. It was the opening night film, and it was kind of the first one after a lot of the stuff with COVID was starting to come to a bit of a close and everything was starting to open up again. This was the perfect film for that, with the way that it built everyone's anticipation and kind of asked you to really immerse yourself in this very creative film. A lot of the films that came out in 2020 during COVID usually were all based in one room. They weren't very visually appealing. They were very good with dialogue and writing, but in terms of visuals and pure ambition, there just wasn't a whole lot of that out there. Annette felt like the first film to do that. It was incredibly ambitious, which kind of led to its divisiveness as a film, but I just thought it was the perfect film to get everyone back in the theatre at the Cannes Film Festival and really have something interesting to talk about right out the gate. I really love the beginning of this. It kind of tells everyone to shut up, enjoy the movie, because you know what? We need that message before pretty much every film, because audiences are just unbearable nowadays with talking on their phones, all that stuff. Just have this film tell everyone to shut the fuck up and enjoy this movie. That is what we need. It was beautiful. And then it asks everyone to take a deep breath, which I've seen this film 3 times now. I do it every single time. It's just a really great way of just immersing you into this movie and really getting you excited and ready to watch this movie and uncover what Leos Carax is trying to do here, because he has a very unique approach to filmmaking. This is wildly different to Holy Motors. I haven't seen really any of his other work, but Holy Motors is a very unique film. I don't really enjoy it all that much, but it's definitely different, and Annette is just something else entirely. And then we get this musical sequence, the first number of this film, So May We Start. Probably my favorite song in the entire film. I've listened to it so many times. And once again, it just really illustrates that excitement that everyone has of coming back to the theater and enjoying this communal experience. It's a really wonderful opening number that is in our world. You have Leos Carax with his daughter, who he has dedicated this movie to, in the background. You have the Sparks brothers singing this song and introducing us to this film. They bump into Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard, and at this stage, they are Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. They're not their characters yet. They're all performing this number. Simon Helberg joins in. It's really well shot, very engaging. It honestly gives me chills every time because, once again, just capturing that excitement of being in a theater and enjoying such a unique experience right after COVID, it just makes me feel something every single time. And it's really cool the way it transitions into them becoming their characters, because at the end of this number, Adam Driver puts his costume on, Marion Cotillard goes into the car, and it begins the film. They turn into, right before our eyes, from Adam Driver to Henry McHenry, from Marion Cotillard to Anne, and Simon Helberg to the conductor. Just really brilliant stuff. I haven't seen a film kind of approach that this way before. It's kind of subtle too. I think on a lot of people's first watch, they might not really notice that as much, because this film has a lot of small details like that are really, really cool when you pick up on. And I just love that introduction. It's really brilliant and just does everything that a beginning of a film should do. Okay, now this movie has a lot to dissect, and that all begins with Henry McHenry, played by Adam Driver. He is one of the most interesting characters I have ever seen play out on a cinema screen. He is this very malevolent presence who is definitely a villain, but because he's the protagonist, he provides this kind of unreliable perspective where, in his eyes, what he's doing is great, but there's little things throughout the film that really illustrate who he is, and I really love the attention to detail that happens throughout Annette. Firstly, that begins with what he's wearing from the jump. Pretty much throughout this entire film, he is wearing green, or there's green around him. Now, if we look into it deeper, the color green signifies ambition, greed, and jealousy, and that is something that pretty much consumes Henry McHenry. That is exactly who he is. It begins with him doing this comedy show, The Ape of God, which I think might be a fun little reference to Holy Motors, as there are apes in that movie. I don't know yet, but I really think it is just a nice little tip of the hat to that movie, which I liked. And he kills it on stage. Now, once again, he's this unreliable narrator. So for me, I think that he is kind of drowning out the criticism and just accepting all of the praise. He is this very narcissistic person. And he kind of has this presentation similar to like a Bo Burnham, where it's just this very fresh and unique style of comedy, which I really enjoyed that scene. Adam Driver obviously kills it. It might be my favorite performance from him. He is just so locked in as this character. He completely understands the assignment and what is needed from him here. He truly, truly gets this character. And then he is dating Anne, played by Marion Cotillard, who is this opera singer and is very well respected. Henry, is a comedian. It's not really as well of a respected art form as opera in terms of prestige. And once again, that link to green, he has this jealousy of Anne because she is killing it each and every night. And Henry points out a few times that she's just doing the same thing. She's dying and dying and dying on stage and doing the same act, but she's getting all of this praise, while Henry is kind of trying to innovate within this comedy sense, but he's kind of seen as an accessory to Anne in terms of all of the publicity which you see throughout the film. It's really crudely done, but I really like it in terms of just showcasing the kind of gossip and paparazzi and everything that goes with being a celebrity. Leos Carax does a really phenomenal job of satirizing it, as well as telling us a lot more about the character and how they're kind of perceived by the public. We then have another really great musical number with We Love Each Other So Much. They practically just say that over and over again with a couple of other lines in there, but that is the main part of this song, where Anne and Henry basically just confess their love for each other, and is basically the process that they went to eventually get Anne pregnant and create Annette. Now, before this number begins, there's this really brilliant shot of Adam Driver coming up from behind to Anne, and he's got his hands, and it looks like he's about to choke her, but then he puts his arms around her shoulders in a very comforting way. It's a nice way of foreshadowing what is going to happen later in the film. Also, in this scene, it really will benefit you to pay attention to Henry's appearance. It changes entirely throughout the film, and I will explain why as we get to the end, because I think that's where it culminates everything that this film is trying to communicate. You notice the little scar he has on his face. You notice that his hair is very long and luscious. Adam Driver looks very sexy here. I'm not gonna lie, he's a good looking dude, and he looks great here. We then get another song that I really enjoy, the I Am a Conductor song performed by Simon Helberg. It's a great introduction to this character, how he is very ambitious and wants to be this well-respected conductor, but he's just working a temp job for Anne right now. We kind of understand why he's working with Anne later on in the film in one of my favorite scenes of this entire movie. It also introduces the opera performance from Anne, which I think really illustrates why she is seen as this very prestigious and well-respected musician that is loved by so many people. You also notice that Anne's hair color in this act is orange, and there are moments where this character is surrounded by orange, and to me, that symbolizes what the color symbolizes: adventure, ambition, and creativity, which is everything that she is. Especially on the creative side, her act is seen as something really special. She has roses thrown at her every single night. She has paparazzi taking photos of her, and once again, she seems like more of a draw to people than Henry McHenry. We then have the Annette birth scene. I'm going to get into Annette's appearance as well because she looks very kooky, and it kind of makes or breaks the film for people, because some people will start to believe that it's really pretentious and stupid at this point because Annette looks pretty goofy. She is this marionette puppet, but it has a lot of symbolism, which might be the easiest thing to dissect. It was kind of the first thing I picked up on when I watched it the first time. There's all these other details about the characters that you pick up on subsequent rewatches, but I will go into why Annette is this appearance, why she changes throughout the film, and what her significance is. We then get a second comedy show after 6 women come forward in this dream sequence, it appears, but afterwards in Henry's second comedy show, he's not really as well loved, and he seems a little bit unhinged as he's performing this act. It's very dark, and a lot of people get a little bit disturbed by it, and you start hearing all of this criticism to Henry, and he kind of snaps. He expresses his real feelings on stage in this incredible song, telling them, asking them what their problem is, and really going in on this audience. He's not very happy here, and instead of hearing all of this outright praise that we hear in the first show, we're just hearing all of this negative criticism, which once again I think really is a great example of what's going on in Henry's head. He has all of the confidence in the world in the first show. In the second one, he is starting to feel a lot more insecure about himself, and because of that, we're hearing all of this negative criticism, because when you're in that space, you just respond to negativity. When you're on top of the world and you feel like you're the absolute best, you're going to drown out all the negative criticism and just accept all the positive stuff. And that's what I believe is happening here. After this, we have this really incredibly shot boat scene, which is basically where Henry kills Anne. He's in this bit of a drunken rampage, and he's dancing with her on this boat with all of this torrential weather happening around them. The waves are crashing overhead. It's very dangerous, and Anne is very scared. But Adam Driver, the most beautiful thing that he does with this performance is he really illustrates his physicality here. He's a big guy, and in this I think he really illustrates that. He uses that as his advantage to intimidate people, to overpower people, and he does that a lot with Anne. Even in the beginning, when he's doing this tickle fight with her, he kind of wants to show that he's dominant over her and that he is the A side. He is the top draw here because, once again, he's so narcissistic and is fueled with all this jealousy. He then eventually throws her overboard. It seems like it's an accident because I think that Henry does feel some kind of guilt there. He's not a complete psychopath, but I think also he's not exactly totally upset that Anne is gone. And when they're washed up on shore, we finally hear Annette sing for the first time. Henry is kind of delirious. They have just crashed on this ship and they've washed ashore, so he's about to pass out, and that's when he hears her sing. He thinks it's beautiful, but he doesn't know that it's actually happening. Also, Anne comes back as kind of this ghost that is haunting Henry now, and by God, she is so creepy in this scene. That kind of ends what I think is the first act of the film. It is quite long, but it really gives you that hook that you need to really keep going with this film. And you get a lot with these characters because as we progress to the next act, you see Henry's appearance change. His hair is shorter now, and that scar is becoming a little bit more noticeable. He's being interrogated by the police, and he's not really a comedian anymore. He's a little bit lost in where he is at the moment. And I think that's where a lot of his guilt comes from because of the fact that his reputation has been ruined a little bit and he has to find his way back. I think that's what is more upsetting to him about Anne's death than him actually caring about her. We return to the conductor, one of my favorite scenes of this film. You get a lot about who he is. It's expressed in this song that he's performing and conducting with, where he expresses his love for Anne, the fact that he had an affair with Anne about a week or so before she met Henry, and you can already tell that he's this much more warm and loving presence. He genuinely cares about Anne, he cares about Annette, and that's why he is going to go and meet with Henry so that he can be in Annette's life and be that comforting and loving presence that she needs. The way that the camera just goes around him, there's no cuts here. Simon Helberg is just bodying this performance. I did not know that he had acting chops like this. It was one of my favorite supporting performances of the year, and just this scene alone really captured that. I adore this scene so much. There's just so much about it that I think is just perfect. He begins to work with Henry because Henry once again hears Annette sing and wants to turn it into an act so that he can stay relevant. Remember the color green and that it also signifies ambition and greed. He wants to turn his daughter into this act so that he can make money and save his own reputation. He does it purely for selfish needs, and the conductor doesn't really think that in the beginning. He's just blown away by her singing and wants to help turn it into an act. But as the film progresses, he kind of catches on a little bit to what's really... They do this really cool world tour. It's shot kind of goofily, but I think it adds to the charm of it, where she's kind of flying across the world, and once again, Annette looks kind of goofy, and with her just zooming across all these cities, it's pretty strange, but I absolutely love it. It makes me laugh. I don't know if it's intentional, but to me, it is charming, and I do love it here. Because at first, you do hear some criticisms of exploitation, and as the viewer of this film, you can definitely see that, but as Annette gains popularity, people stop caring about that as she turns into this massive sensation. She has cameras and paparazzi chasing after her and Henry. He absolutely loves this because, once again, he's kind of gained favor with the public again. But he's also more insecure than ever. He goes to this massive nightclub and tries to sleep with all of these women. His appearance has changed yet again. The scars are becoming more noticeable. His hair's getting shorter and shorter. And He even mentions that in the song that he performs. In this song, he says, "All the girls I see look so great to me. What amazes me is what they see in me. All the girls I see in France and Italy, or here in Ropogny, what do they see in me?" It's a clear indication of his insecurity. He does not understand why these women want to have sex with him. He then says, "Am I handsome?" And then the girls say, "You're so handsome." He then says, "Charming." "Well, so. The girls say, "You're so charming." He says, "I'm a foreign guy." They say, "So exotic." He then says, "Hard to imagine all these fucking men who hate themselves but want us to love them. All the girls I see look so great to me, but will I ever be lovable again?" This is such a clear indication of where Henry is at. Annette is the one that has gained favor with everyone, not Henry. He is working as this kind of assistant and manager to Annette, but he's not the ape of God anymore. He's not doing those massive performances in comedy. He does still have a little bit of a reputation because of what happened to Anne and the 6 women that have come forward. So he feels really lost right now. And while he doesn't showcase that to the general public, that's what he feels inside. While this is happening, the conductor is playing a song to Annette for her to go to sleep, and it's "We Love Each Other So Much," the song that Henry and Anne performed earlier on in the film, expressing their love and desire for one another. Henry finds out about this, and he doesn't know how she figured out that song. The conductor admits that he wrote that song for Anne, and they performed that together, showcasing to Henry that they had that affair about a week before Henry and Anne started dating. Henry does not take this well. He is a very insecure person. He's filled with jealousy, and he really takes that out on the conductor here. He has that physicality once again. Simon Helberg is a lot shorter than Adam Driver, and Henry uses that to his advantage by overpowering him and drowning and murdering him. And Annette either sees this, hears it, knows about it, because when Henry comes back into the room to comfort Annette, she knocks over the lamp, which was that inspiration for her to start singing and pursuing this career. Because I think that's when she finally realizes that she's being exploited and not really used for loving reasons. She's being used purely for money and fame to keep Henry in the limelight somehow because he's starved of it. Then we get the final performance from Annette. It gets announced at the Hyper Bowl, which is just supposed to be the Super Bowl. And she comes down for this big epic performance, and she's not singing for a while, and Henry gets really frustrated about this. He's not happy at all. Once again shows that he's not coming from this loving fatherly place. He just wants her to just make him as much money as possible. She is being heavily exploited throughout this film, and just this scene and his frustration kind of illustrates that quite clearly to me. And she finally says that Daddy kills people, putting him under a lot of fire because he did kill Anne and he did kill the conductor. He goes to trial. Anne comes back in her ghostly form. It's very creepy, but I absolutely love it. And he goes to jail. Now, this final scene is where Henry's appearance changes the most. Remember in the beginning, he had this luscious long hair. His skin was perfect. He was tall, he's very confident. And in this, he's kind of a lot more shriveled. His face looks gaunt. That scar is massive and as red as ever. His hair is short and grey now. And to me, I think that Henry has always looked something like this, maybe a little bit younger, but he always saw himself as something so beautiful and majestic and this really confident person. But as the film progresses, we kind of see who he really is as a person. The scar is supposed to signify his villainy because it gets more and more noticeable as the film progresses. because he's doing all of these very despicable acts. He has one last meeting with Annette and she is furious. She's cursing out Henry. She's even cursing out Anne. And Henry at least acknowledges that Anne is a very gentle and kind soul. And I think he does have some feelings towards her. He doesn't hate her completely. He's just super jealous and that's what caused him to kill her. But he does have feelings for her. And when Annette scolds Anne, Henry is like, please don't do that to her. Because he at least wants her to take away the fact that she had this loving mother and this loving presence in her life that Henry did not provide. It seems like he finally feels guilt for everything that he has done throughout the film, being consumed in all of these feelings that have proven so costly. They gave him everything in terms of superficial nonsense, but in terms of what really matters, in terms of having a loving connection with people and having all of this support and warmth around him, he has none of that. Also, in this musical act where Annette is scolding Henry, she turns into a human. She's no longer this marionette, and it's pretty obvious to me that the doll signified that she was literally a puppet to be used for fame, money, notoriety, all of that stuff in terms of Henry's eyes. Now, you may debate why in the scenes where Anne is just with Annette, why is she a doll? Or when the conductor is with Annette, why is she still a doll? Because they clearly love her and care for her. This story is all from Henry's perspective. He is the protagonist throughout this film. So that is, to me, why she is always a doll right up until the end. Because that is when Henry finally acknowledges her as a real person that has thoughts and feelings and he actually kind of cares about. It took him that long to realize it. Then, breaking the fourth wall, the final shot and the final line of this movie, Henry looks up at the camera, looks directly at us and says, "Don't look at me." This is so powerful because this confident person is now gone. He doesn't want us to view him anymore now that his life has turned quite ugly. He has nothing now. He isn't this person that he portrayed himself to be for so long. And I just think that one line just says so much. He stands in the corner, looking directly at the corner with the walls that are green around him, kind of signifying to me that jealousy, greed, ambition has consumed and ruined his life, and he will be forever trapped in that prison that he built for himself. Really excellent symbolism here. Once again, says so much without a word, and I love that type of storytelling. I think overall, Annette is just such a unique and original film that has so much to say. It doesn't always say it on the surface, and it kind of tricks you because some of it is so on the nose, like "we love each other so much" song. It's just them saying that repeatedly. It's just literally telling you constantly that they love each other so much. But I think that lulls a lot of people into a false sense of security because it tells people directly that thing, but there's so much happening underneath the surface with the colors and the symbolism. I haven't even talked about a lot of the apes that show up. Annette has a toy ape. Henry looks at one in a toy store. The ape of God. I still don't really fully understand what that means yet. There's still a lot to look at with this film. And I think on a 4th, 5th, 6th watch, maybe I'll finally get there. But there's just so much to soak in with this movie. And I love it so much. It's one of my favorite musical films of all time. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It is just so beautiful. Leos Carax did a fantastic job of directing this. I think it's his best work. I haven't seen too much of his stuff. I've only seen this and Holy Motors, so I probably can't really claim that yet. But it's going to be tough for him to top Annette to me. I really, really love this film. And I think the Sparks brothers did a fantastic job writing this screenplay. And I really want them to do something again because I think they've got a really interesting approach to writing that I really enjoyed watching. And that is everything I have to say about Annette so far. Let me know what you think about this movie in the comments below. Are you a fan? I know a lot of people kind of hate this movie, But man, there's so much for me to love here. And if you love it, if you hate it, please let me know in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.